Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something I think a lot of you listening will relate to, the feeling that there just isn't enough time in the day for fitness.
It's almost universal, isn't it? You look at the global stats and it's kind of shocking. About a third of adults worldwide just aren't meeting those minimum physical activity recommendations.
And the number one reason they give.
Time. Always time. I don't have enough time. It's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, it leads to this huge problem, this crisis of inactivity, really. We're talking 31% of adults, and maybe even more worrying, something like 80% of teenagers globally aren't hitting those minimums.
Which are, just to remind everyone, about 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate activity, or 75 to 150 of vigorous stuff.
Which sounds like a lot if you're starting from zero or if your schedule's already packed.
Exactly. And that's where this concept we're exploring today comes in. It's designed to tackle that exact feeling, the no-time barrier, and maybe even the lack of motivation that comes with it.
Right. So our mission today is to give you the lowdown on exercise snacks. Heard the term. We're digging into a really significant piece of research here.
Yeah, it's a big one. A systematic review and meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Basically, they took data from 11 different high-quality studies, randomized controlled trials, to see if these tiny intentional bursts of exercise actually make a difference for adults who aren't very active.
So the big question for you listening is, can squeezing in just a few minutes of effort here and there throughout your day really give you meaningful health benefits? Is this a genuine strategy or just, another trend?
Let's unpack it. Let's look at the science behind the snack.
Okay, before we get into the snacks themselves, maybe let's just quickly set the stage again on those activity guidelines. You mentioned the minutes.
Right. 150 to 300 moderate, or 75 to 150 vigorous per week. And like you said, those numbers can feel pretty overwhelming if you're inactive.
It creates this perception barrier and maybe a motivation barrier too.
Absolutely. If the goal feels too big, it's easy to just not start. That's what this research is trying to directly address, the time perception and the motivation factor. The whole idea of an exercise snack is to lower that barrier to entry right down, almost to nothing.
Okay, so let's get precise then. What exactly is an exercise snack, according to how these scientists defined it? It's not just wandering over to the coffee machine, right?
Definitely not. The definition they used is pretty strict, which is actually what makes the findings quite powerful. It's a structured bout of activity.
It's structured, okay.
Yeah, performed at moderate to vigorous intensity. And here's the kicker. It lasts 5 minutes or less.
5 minutes total, or 5 minutes of the hard part.
5 minutes or less of the hard part. Crucially, that time excludes any warm-up or cool-down. So it's really focused, intense movement for 5 minutes, maybe less.
And how often?
They looked at studies where these were done at least twice a day, sometimes more. And this was happening anywhere from 3 to 7 days a week.
Okay. And the studies themselves typically ran for how long?
The interventions usually lasted between 4 and 12 weeks. Enough time to see if physiological changes started happening.
That word structured seems really important here. You mentioned it's planned. How does that differ from, just sprinting up the stairs because you're late for a meeting?
Good question. That's where we distinguish it from a related concept called vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity. Or maybe we can just call it VLP for short.
VLP, got it. So unplanned bursts.
Exactly. VLP is those incidental, unplanned moments, like, carrying really heavy shopping bags quickly from the car, or, running flat out for a bus. It's just part of your day, not a scheduled exercise moment.
But exercise snaps are different. You consciously decide, okay, now I'm doing my snack.
Precisely. You stop what you're doing, you dedicate that short burst, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5, to the planned activity, and then you go back to your day. It's intentional.
Interesting. And we already had clues that these short bursts matter, didn't we, from the VLP research?
We did, yeah. There's epidemiological data suggesting that even getting less than 5 minutes of VLPA scattered through your day is linked to some pretty significant health benefits, like around a 40% lower risk of dying from any cause, including cancer.
40%, just from incidental bursts.
That's what some large observational studies suggest. It tells us the body seems to respond really well to intensity, even if it's super brief, planned or unplanned.
So this review we're focusing on basically said, okay, if unplanned bursts work, what happens if we make them planned? Can we measure the effect more directly?
That's the core idea. They looked at 11 of these randomized controlled trials, so comparing groups doing the snacks against control groups who didn't change their habits.
And who are the people in these studies?
It was 414 adults in total, all previously sedentary or classified as physically inactive. An important demographic note, though. Nearly 70% of the participants were women.
Okay, good to keep in mind for generalizability and the ages.
Quite varied. They included younger adults, middle-aged adults, and also specific studies focusing on older adults, which we'll touch on.
And what were these snacks actually like? What were people doing for those 5 minutes?
Well, for the younger and middle-aged groups, it was overwhelmingly stair climbing.
Just climbing stairs.
Pretty much. Either climbing continuously for a short period or doing intervals like maybe climbing 3 flights of stairs as quickly as possible, resting briefly, and repeating that 3 times. Often done maybe 3 times spread throughout the day.
Simple, accessible, no fancy equipment needed.
Exactly. That's part of the appeal. Now, for the older adults in the studies typically defined as around 69 to 74 years old, the snacks were a bit different.
Adapted for that age group?
Right. They use things like specific leg-focused strength exercises, often just using body weight, or sometimes lower-impact activities like short bouts of Tai Chi performed at a moderate intensity.
Okay, so we've set the scene, defined the terms. Let's get to the results. You mentioned this review pulled everything together. Where did the exercise snacks really make a difference?
Right. So here's where it gets really interesting and where the evidence was the strongest. The absolute standout finding was related to cardiorespiratory fitness.
Okay, explain that. What is cardiorespiratory fitness and why does it matter so much?
Think of it as the efficiency of your heart, lungs, and muscles working together to use oxygen during prolonged exercise. It's often measured by something called VO2 max, and why it matters. Well, it's arguably the single best predictor we have of long-term health and longevity. Better fitness equals a longer, healthier life, generally speaking.
And the snack.
The snacks significantly improved it. The meta-analysis, pooling all that data, showed a clear, statistically significant improvement in cardiorespiratory fitness in these inactive adults compared to the control groups who just stayed sedentary.
How certain are we about that finding? Sometimes results can be a bit borderline.
Not this one. The researchers graded the certainty of the evidence for this specific outcome, the cardiorespiratory fitness improvement, as moderate. In the world of systematic reviews, moderate certainty is actually quite good. It means we can have a reasonable level of confidence in that result.
Okay, so it works for fitness, but how well does it work? Was it a tiny improvement or something noticeable?
This is the really fascinating part. They calculated the effect size, a statistical measure of the magnitude of the difference. It's often reported as Hedges G. And the value they found was 1.37.
1.37. What does that number mean in practical terms? Is that small, medium, large?
It's large. An effect size of 1.37 is considered a large effect. This wasn't just a statistically significant blip. It suggests the physiological change, the actual improvement in fitness, was substantial, really quite meaningful.
Wow. Okay, I have to push back slightly here because I can hear listeners thinking, hold on, how can climbing stairs for maybe 3 minutes, a few times a day, produce a large physiological effect? It sounds almost too easy compared to slogging it out at the gym.
It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it? But that large effect size, the 1.37, is the key piece of evidence. And what makes it even more compelling is how it compares to other, more traditional forms of exercise.
Like what? Like regular jogging or high-intensity interval training?
Exactly. The researchers specifically noted that this effect size of 1.37 is comparable to, and in some cases even slightly greater than, the typical effect sizes seen in studies of traditional high-intensity interval training, HIA.
Seriously, HII usually involves much longer sessions, right? Like 20, 30 minutes with intense bursts and recovery.
Yep. Those traditional HII studies usually report pooled effect sizes for fitness improvements, ranging from about 0.79 up to maybe 1.1 time. And here we are seeing 1.37 from these tiny snacks.
So you're getting potentially the same or even slightly better bang for your buck in terms of cardiorespiratory fitness, but with a fraction of the time commitment.
That's precisely the implication. The efficiency argument becomes incredibly strong. You're achieving these large fitness gains with micro bouts scattered through the day, taking minutes, not carving out a whole half hour or hour block.
And what was the actual total weekly time commitment in these studies that got such good results?
This really highlights the efficiency. These significant fitness gains were seen even when the total time spent snacking per week was way below the standard recommendations for vigorous activity.
How far below?
The total weekly exercise time in these interventions ranged from a low of about wait for it, 4.5 minutes per week.
4.5 minutes a week.
4.5 minutes per week in some protocols, up to a maximum of about 67.5 minutes per week in others. And even that top end is still below the 75-minute minimum guideline for vigorous activity.
4.5 minutes a week leading to a large effect size in fitness. How is that even possible? Is it purely about the intensity?
Intensity seems to be the critical factor. When you push yourself to a near maximal effort, even for just 60 seconds, like sprinting up those stairs, you're triggering a very strong signal to your body.
You're demanding a lot from your system very quickly.
Exactly. You're recruiting a large percentage of your muscle fibers, especially those powerful fast-twitch fibers. That intense, albeit brief stress is enough to kickstart adaptations in your mitochondria, the energy factories in your cells and in your cardiovascular system. It forces the body to get better at delivering and using oxygen.
So you're kind of tricking the system into adapting without needing huge amounts of volume.
That's a good way to put it. You're maximizing the intensity signal to compensate for the very low volume. It seems to be a very efficient pathway for improving this specific measure, cardiorespiratory fitness.
And connecting this back to the bigger picture, why should someone care about improving their cardiorespiratory fitness beyond just feeling less winded going upstairs?
Because it directly impacts your long-term health and mortality risk. The review highlighted this connection. Even relatively small improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness are linked to significant reductions in the risk of dying prematurely.
How small are we talking?
They cited data showing that just a modest increase specifically, an improvement of about 3 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute, which is a standard unit for VO2 max, is associated with roughly a 15% lower risk of mortality.
15% lower risk from a modest gain. And these snacks produced a large gain.
Correct. So when you can achieve these potentially substantial fitness improvements with a method that requires such a minimal time investment, literally sitting into a few minutes here and there, it shifts the conversation. This isn't just a quirky fitness trend. It could be a serious public health tool for people who feel time is their biggest barrier.
Okay, that's a very compelling case for the fitness benefits. But health is more than just fitness, right? So now we need to pivot and look at the other side of the coin. Where did the exercise snacks not seem to deliver? Let's get into the nuance.
Right, and this is equally important for giving a balanced picture. While the impact on the heart and lungs was clear and strong, the review found no statistically significant effects of exercise snacking on several other key health markers.
Which ones specifically? The things people often track when they start trying to get healthier.
Exactly. There were essentially two main areas where things didn't really change compared to the control groups. First, markers related to vascular health. Things like blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic, didn't show significant improvement.
Okay, no change in blood pressure. What else?
Second, blood fat profiles. So things like total cholesterol, HDL, the good cholesterol, LDL, the bad cholesterol, and triglycerides. Again, no statistically significant changes were observed across the pooled studies for these markers.
And what about body composition? Did people lose weight or body fat?
Generally, no. The meta-analysis didn't find significant changes in overall body mass index, BMI, or body fat percentage either.
So fitter, but not necessarily leaner or with better metabolic blood markers based on this data. What about strength? Did those stair sprints make people stronger?
Not really, at least not for lower body strength. The studies measuring muscular strength in the legs didn't find significant differences between the snack groups and the control groups.
So better endurance for climbing stairs maybe, but not stronger in a traditional lift?
That seems to be the case. However, there was one small positive finding related to muscle. They did see a small, statistically significant improvement in muscular endurance.
Ah, okay. But I sense a but coming.
A pretty big but. That improvement in muscular endurance was only seen in the studies involving the older adults, that 69 to 74 age group who were doing those specific leg exercises or Tai Chi snacks.
Not in the younger stair climbers.
Correct. And even more importantly, the researchers rated the certainty of the evidence for that specific finding, the muscular endurance in older adults, as very low.
Very low certainty, meaning we can't really rely on that finding yet?
Exactly. It's suggestive, maybe warrants more research, but it's not a solid conclusion we can draw from this current body of evidence. Too much uncertainty around it.
Okay, so we have this interesting split. Big improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness, but little to no change in blood pressure, cholesterol, body composition, or strength. Why the difference? Why wouldn't that intense effort translate across the board?
The researchers offered a few really plausible explanations, mostly tied to the design of the studies and the people who participated.
What's the first reason?
Baseline health. Many of the participants, especially in the studies with younger or middle-aged adults, were actually pretty healthy to begin with, apart from being inactive.
Meaning their blood pressure and cholesterol might have already been in a decent range?
Precisely. If you take someone whose cholesterol levels are already good, even an effective exercise intervention might not lower them much further. There's less room for improvement on those specific markers if you're starting from a relatively healthy baseline. The intervention showed its power in conditioning the cardiovascular system, but maybe you need a population with existing metabolic issues to see significant shifts in those disease risk markers.
That makes sense. What's the second factor they pointed to?
Duration of the studies. This seems particularly relevant for the body composition results.
How so?
Most of these exercise snack interventions ran for only about 4 to 8 weeks. And we generally know that seeing significant changes in things like body fat percentage or building muscle mass takes time and consistent effort, often longer than just a month or two.
Right, fat loss and muscle gain are slower processes.
Exactly. And interestingly, the review did mention one specific study that stood out because it did report significant reductions in body fat, including that stubborn visceral fat around the organs.
And what was different about that study?
It ran for longer. It had a 12-week intervention period.
So maybe 4-8 weeks is enough to kickstart the fitness adaptations, but you need to stick with it for 3 months or more to really start seeing changes on the scale or in body fat.
That seems to be a very strong possibility based on this evidence. If fat loss is a primary goal for someone trying this, the message is probably patience and consistency over at least 12 weeks.
Okay, baseline health duration. What else explains the lack of results in some areas, like strength?
The third factor is simply the type of exercise used in most of the studies.
You mean the stair climbing focus?
Yeah, stair climbing is fantastic for your heart and lungs. It's a great cardiovascular workout. But for building significant muscular strength, maybe not so much, especially once you get past the initial beginner games.
Why not? It feels hard.
It does feel hard because it's demanding aerobically and anaerobically. But strength development, in the traditional sense, relies heavily on the principle of progressive overload, gradually increasing the resistance or load your muscles have to work against.
And bodyweight stair climbing doesn't really offer that.
Not in the same way as lifting heavier weights. Your body weight is relatively constant. While it's enough stimulus to improve fitness and maybe some initial strength in very sedentary people, it might not be enough overload to keep driving strength gains once you adapt a bit. Strength usually requires heavier loads, more volume, or both, which wasn't the focus of these short, intense snack protocols.
So it's a great fitness tool, but probably not a replacement for a dedicated strength training program if building muscle or raw strength is your main goal.
That seems to be a fair assessment based on this review. It excels at cardiorespiratory fitness, but its effects on strength seem limited with the protocol studied so far.
Okay, this is all fascinating about the physiological effects, but maybe the most important question for actually using this approach is, do people actually stick with it? Let's talk about adherence and practicality.
Yes, and this is arguably where the exercise snack concept really comes into its own. The adherence data from these trials was, frankly, remarkable. It strongly suggests this approach is highly feasible and acceptable for people in the real world.
Okay, hit me with the numbers. How well did people stick to these snack routines?
The researchers looked to two things. First, compliance. That means when participants were supposed to do a snack, did they actually follow the instructions correctly? The compliance rate was incredibly high, 91.1%.
Wow, 91%. So they did it right when they did it. What about sticking with the program overall?
That's adherence. Did they stay with the program for the full duration of the study? The adherence rate was also very impressive, 82.8%.
Over 82% of people stuck with it for the entire 4, 8, or 12 weeks. How does that compare to other types of exercise programs?
It compares extremely favorably, especially for programs done unsupervised, meaning people were just told what to do and expected to do it on their own time.
Like typical gym routines or jogging schedules people try to follow?
Exactly. The review contrasts these numbers with typical adherence rates for unsupervised moderate-intensity continuous training. Think steady jogging, which often hover around 68%. Even adherence to traditional structured HIIT protocols often drops to about 63%.
So 83% for snacks versus maybe 63-68% for more traditional approaches. That's a huge difference in sustainability.
It really is. It strongly suggests that the very nature of the exercise snack, its brevity, its flexibility, the fact you can slot it into small gaps in your day directly overcomes those major barriers we talked about. The perceived lack of time and the potential lack of motivation for longer sessions.
The barrier to entry is just so low. Committing to 3 minutes feels much easier than committing to 30 minutes, especially multiple times a week.
That seems to be the psychological advantage. It makes exercise snacks a potentially powerful tool, not just for getting people started, but for helping them maintain physical activity habits long-term, especially if they've struggled with consistency before.
Did this high adherence hold up in the older adult groups too?
Yes, it did. The studies focusing on the 69 to 74-year-olds reported adherence rates that were also very high, generally ranging from 81% up to 98%.
98%?
I know. It really supports the idea that this can be a very viable, independent, home-based exercise option, which is particularly important for older individuals who might face barriers like transportation to a gym or mobility limitations.
Okay, so the practicality and adherence look like a major win. But like any good scientific analysis, we need to talk about the limitations of the research itself. You mentioned moderate certainty for fitness, but very low for other things.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is key here. While the fitness finding is solid, we have to acknowledge that the evidence for most of the other outcomes, blood pressure, cholesterol, muscular endurance, was indeed rated as very low or low certainty.
And why such low certainty? What were the main weaknesses in the overall body of evidence they reviewed?
Several factors contributed. Firstly, the total number of people across all 11 trials was relatively small, just 414 participants. For a meta-analysis trying to draw broad conclusions, more data is always better.
Small sample size.
Okay. Secondly, there was quite a bit of variability or heterogeneity between the studies. They used slightly different intensities, different frequencies of snacks, different total durations for the interventions. This mixing of apples and oranges makes it harder to pool the results cleanly and be highly confident in the overall average effect for some outcomes.
Makes sense. Different recipes might give slightly different results.
Exactly. And thirdly, as we noted earlier, there's the potential gender bias. With almost 70% of participants being women, we need to be cautious about automatically assuming the effects will be identical for men. We need more data, including diverse populations.
Were there also things that weren't measured in these studies that could be important? Gaps in the data?
Yes, a couple of significant ones. One major limitation on the activity tracking side is that none of the studies used objective measures like accelerometers or fitness trackers to quantify the participants' total daily physical activity.
They just relied on people reporting their own activity outside the snacks?
Mostly, yes. Which means we can't completely rule out the possibility that starting the exercise snacks might have motivated people to become more active in other ways too. Maybe they started taking the stairs more often generally, or walking a bit more.
And that extra, unmeasured activity could have contributed to the fitness gains, muddling the picture of just the snacks effect.
It's a possibility. It's a confounding factor that couldn't be fully accounted for. While the intervention itself was clearly effective, the lack of precise tracking of all activity slightly clouds the ability to isolate the snack effect perfectly.
Okay, that's one gap. What about on the health marker side? You mentioned blood pressure and lipids weren't significantly changed. Were there other important metabolic markers missing?
Ah, yes. This is probably the single biggest gap highlighted in the review, especially concerning metabolic health. None of the 11 included studies measured glucose levels or markers of insulin sensitivity.
No glucose measurements at all. That seems like a massive oversight, doesn't it, given the focus on short bursts and interrupting sedentary time?
It really does. We have a lot of separate evidence showing that breaking up long periods of sitting, even with light activity, can be very effective at improving blood sugar control, especially after meals. Muscles suck up glucose when they work.
You'd expect intense snacks to be even more effective at that.
You absolutely would. Intense exercise burns through muscle glycogen stores, which should make the muscles very hungry for glucose afterwards, helping to lower blood sugar levels and potentially improve insulin sensitivity over time. It's a known physiological mechanism.
So by not measuring glucose, these studies missed a potentially huge and possibly quite immediate benefit of exercise snacking, particularly for people concerned about diabetes or metabolic syndrome.
That's the strong suspicion. It remains a critical area for future research. We need studies specifically designed to measure the impact of exercise snacks on glucose regulation. It's very likely there's a significant benefit there, but this current review couldn't confirm it because the data simply wasn't collected.
Okay. And one last limitation to touch on the type of exercise again.
Right. Just to reiterate, the heavy reliance on stair climbing for the younger and middle-aged adults is a limitation in terms of generalizability. It works, clearly, but it means we don't know much from this review about using the snack format for other types of activity in those age groups.
Like resistance training snacks. Could you do, say, 3 minutes of intense bodyweight squats and push-ups and get similar benefits? Or maybe even added benefits like strength?
That's the million-dollar question for future research. We need studies looking at resistance-based snacks, maybe plyometrics, maybe kettlebell swings, whatever fits the short, intense format. Could those provide both the cardiovascular kick and a strength stimulus? We just don't have the data from this specific review to say.
Okay, let's try to pull all these threads together then. We've covered the wins, the limitations, the adherence. What's the final synthesis? What's the bottom line on exercise snacks based on this deep dive?
The bottom line is pretty clear on the main point. Exercise snacks are scientifically shown to be a really effective and, importantly, highly acceptable and doable strategy for significantly boosting cardiorespiratory fitness in people who are currently inactive.
So for that key marker of longevity and health, it's a big thumbs up.
A big thumbs up. With moderate certainty evidence, it offers a genuine, time-efficient alternative, or maybe a starting point, delivering fitness gains that are comparable to much longer, more demanding HEI sessions, but with way higher adherence rates.
That adherence piece seems crucial. The best program is the one you actually do.
Exactly. The 82-83% long-term adherence is perhaps the most impactful finding from a public health perspective. It suggests this method genuinely overcomes the time barrier for many people.
But we need to be honest about what it's not proven to do, at least based on this current evidence.
Right. The nuance is critical. The benefits for muscular strength and for improving those cardiometabolic markers like blood pressure, cholesterol, and body fat are not clearly established by this review.
And that's likely due to factors like short study durations, maybe the specific exercises used, or the participants being relatively healthy metabolically to start with.
That seems to be the case.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean snacks can't help with those things, especially if done for longer periods or maybe using different exercises. But the current pooled evidence isn't strong enough to make those claims yet. And the lack of glucose data is a major gap we need to fill.
So the big takeaway for you listening seems pretty straightforward. Doing something is vastly better than doing nothing. And these brief, vigorous snacks are a scientifically validated way to get a significant fitness benefit with a minimal time investment.
Absolutely. The evidence supports that short, intense bursts work for improving your fundamental cardiovascular fitness. You don't necessarily need a gym membership or huge blocks of time to start making meaningful physiological improvements. It's about leveraging intensity in small, manageable doses.
It's like a micro investment in your health that can yield a really significant return, especially on that crucial fitness measure linked to living longer.
A perfect analogy. Small deposit, potentially large payout in terms of health span and lifespan.
All right, to wrap things up, we always like to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to chew on.
Given everything we've discussed, the strong link between snacks and fitness, the high adherence, and even that potential connection to the benefits seen with unplanned VLPA, which might cut cardiovascular mortality risk substantially.
Yeah.
The question becomes very personal, doesn't it? How can you, listening right now, intentionally carve out just 3 to 5 minutes for some near maximal effort sometime today or in your next workday?
Forget waiting for the perfect hour at the gym. What can you do right now or between meetings?
Could it be finding the tallest staircase nearby and hitting it hard for 3 one-minute bursts? Could it be 90 seconds of burpees, rest a minute, then another 90 seconds? Maybe some fast jump squats or shadow boxing.
What's that one tiny, high-intensity micro investment you can realistically schedule and commit to, knowing that even that small deposit could be building significant long-term health capital?
Start small, maybe just one snack a day. But when you do it, make it count. Go hard for those few minutes. The science suggests your body will thank you for it.
Find your snack. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.